How's it going, folks? I'm Matthew. This is Lemora's Cards, and today we're taking a look at CommanderFest Guangzhou? I might not know how to say the name of it, but I know this was a 73-player cEDH event that took place in China. Didn't have access to the top 16 until like this past weekend, and I got a whole bunch of stuff going on this past week, so we're just not getting to it. But there's some really cool stuff here, and I think you're going to be excited to take a look at it anyways. Everyone always tells me they love the international sort of cEDH coverage. That's their favorite thing. That's what we're going to be doing today. I'm pretty excited to get to this. Yes, you may have noticed I don't have a beard right now. It's hot. I don't want to deal with it. It'll be back by next week anyways. Just get over it. If you give me any mean comments about it, I will tell your mom. So let's just move on. But yeah, as always, we'll be taking a look at the top 16, the meta breakdown, all that good stuff. If you enjoyed this video, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know down below which of these deck lists was your favorite. There's some really hot stuff here that I think you're gonna love. Thank you as always to my amazing patrons over on Patreon, whose support helps me make all these videos back to back to back to back for you guys to enjoy. If you want to support me, that's a great way to do it. And I think with all that being said, we can go ahead and hop into it. Use the link in the description below to download Whatnot, and you'll get $15 to use to buy Magic singles, sealed product, get anything that you want really. There's no limits. You just get $15 on the account for free just for signing up. This is one of the best ways you can support the channel. And again, it's just free stuff. Use the link in the description below. Give Whatnot a try. Welcome to TopDeck.gg, your community's home for everything competitive Magic has to offer. Whether you're hosting an event, playing for a huge prize, or trying to advertise your store to thousands of players, we've got you covered. Using intuitive pairing software, playing Magic is a breeze. All your players have to do is sign up online, then scan the QR code in store. Give your competitors the gift of perfect information as their bracket updates in real time. Then, when the match is decided, our self-reporting software saves you time and leaves paper match slips in the past. Leave the heavy lifting to us so your community can sit back, relax, and have a great day of playing Magic. All right, so first, we're going to look at the meta breakdown, and it's not crazy, but it is a little different than what we're used to seeing. So we have the top deck being Sisay with 5 entries, 2 top 16, so pretty good conversion rate. But you can see already there's not super high numbers for some of the bigger decks. Tivit at 5, Tymna Kraum at 4, Talion at 4, and then Cannons, Nadus, which seem to do pretty well. Korvold 2 for 2, 100% conversion rate. Yeah, we're going to get a look at 2 of those today. Anala, so lots of 1s and 2s. A whole lot of one-offs that we're going to get to see in our top 16. In terms of like the most present decks, yeah, it's about, it's Tymna Kraums and stuff like that, but it's like, there's 4 TNKs versus like 2 Korvolds, and like pretty good amount of deck diversity here. I'm assuming these are gonna be kind of like Planeswalker Sisay, but you never know. Maybe the clam chowder builds have moved over to China. We'll see. Yeah, nothing too crazy about the meta breakdown so far, but we're gonna have to get into the decks and see like what exactly the spread we're looking at is. And the first thing we're looking at is going to be a Tivit. Tivit, we're on Teferi. We're probably on Kitten. We're on Kitten. Okay, nothing too wild standing out. The Tivits, they love their Dauntlesses and their Dranniths. Nothing like a Lavinia or a Grand Arbiter. No like super hard stacks piece here. Just pretty good Esper cards. They are on Hullbreaker Horror. Some Tivits are on it, some aren't. Tivits nowadays are not too commonly playing ad nauseum, so they're much more likely to play something like a Hullbreaker Horror that can just win them the game with their Tivit. And then just playing Talion as a draw engine. Only the 1 clone, no Fimage, no Flesh Duplicate. Sorceries. Okay, so some interesting stuff. We've got like, Tutors, Sevrek, stuff we expect. Toxic Deluge, which is a pretty common board wipe for Esper shells like this. And then Nuclear Fallout, which isn't super uncommon, but I think still hasn't quite caught on here to the extent that it has in Japan and maybe China. X black black, each creature gets twice -X on a turn. Each player gets X rad counters, so you can spend 1 mana. Each creature gets -2/-2. Basically 3 mana total. And it can go as big as you want, and you get those rad counters. Pretty cool. Just a flexible little board wipe that doesn't pressure your life total. And then Beseech, not the most common in mid-rangey shells, but in a deck like Tivit, where you might be decently likely in a long game to have tons of tokens lying around to Beseech off. Go get your Time Sieve, your Grand Abolish, or whatever you need. Pretty good card. Instants are on the Strix Serenade, are on the Delay, Mana Drain, Limdul's Vault. So just a couple things standing out. We're not on the Nas we didn't expect to be. Offer, lots of Tivits are on that. Nothing too wild here. Muddle the Mixture is like a meh way to go get your Time Sieve or any part of Thorial Tainted Pact, whatever. Word of Invention, Artifact Tutor, that's decently flexible. Artifacts. So we do have a couple of the little hate pieces. We've got the Grafdigger's Cage. We have the Curse Totem. Just the 2. Curse Totem really doesn't affect us at all. We're not even running Dothy. It's just Ranger Captain, right? Yeah, basically only affects Ranger Captain, maybe something we might clone. own. And then Grafdigger's Cage shuts down our Sevrek. That's fine. Hurts the Breach decks way more than it hurts us, and the Creature Tutor decks. Imposter Mech, Tivits love this card. They love getting a little Bowmaster that can't be pinged. And of course, we got the Time Sieve, and we're on the One Ring. Enchantment's pretty standard too. Touch isn't in all the decks, but pretty good and pretty flexible. Trouble in Pairs is pretty nice. Tivits love the Blind Obedience, slowing people down a little bit. And then we are on 28 lands. We got the Cavern of Souls. We're on the Manamo. We are on Saga. Nothing else really standing out. No Surveil lands, no crazy utility stuff. So relatively standard Tivit with just like a few swaps that you might not see in every deck over here. At number 15. Okay, we're already seeing something kind of cool. We're doing Tymna Dargo, which is, you know, one that we've seen pretty recently on my last video. And then immediately we got Ob Nixilis, the Adversary, showing up, which is a Planeswalker that everyone said would be the new Oko when it was getting revealed. 3 mana. It has Casualty X. Copy isn't legendary and has Starting Loyalty X. So basically, you cast Ob Nixilis, you could sacrifice Dargo, for instance, and then you get a copy of Ob Nixilis that is 7 Starting Loyalty. The significant part of that is Ob Nixilis has a -7 that target player draws 7 and loses 7 life. So you can play Ob, get a regular version of it with 3 loyalty that can not really do all that much, to be honest. I don't think his +1 or his -2 is all that impactful, but being able to cast it and then get the -7 of this is basically like 3 mana, draw 7, and leave a Planeswalker lying around too. So pretty nice. Creatures, pretty heavy creature count here, leaning into the Tymna stuff. A lot of similarities to the last Tymna Dargo I covered with cards like Goblin Engineer, your Ruthless Technomancers, Rakdos the Muscle was in there too. You know, great card with Dargo. We're doing Dualcaster Mage, but a few more mid-rangey-ish options, right? We've got a Dothy Voidwalker, who we really haven't seen much of on the channel recently at all, I don't feel like. Mayhem Devil is an outlet. You got Facebreaker that kind of stands out as a very dedicated Tymna card. And then Disciple of Bolas, which is ETB, sack a creature, gain X life, draw X cards with their power. So 4 mana, sack Dargo, draw 7. Pretty sick. For the most part, the rest of these being generically good Mardu cards or that are good with Tymna or good with Dargo. Sorceries, we're on the Deluge. We got a board wipe of our own. Just the Molten Duplication to go infinite with Dualcaster Mage. Got the Sevrek. Reanimate, even though we don't have a crazy target, but we do have decent things to get back, right? Like we're sacking creatures off, we can reanimate them, sacrifice them again and get more value, reanimate somebody's Dockside. Reanimate's just a good card. We're on the Yogg-Will, which I love to see. Super hot card. Instants, pretty lean instant count. Burn Offering, no sacrifice. It's right there. I can't even read, dude. Silence the Norm's Chant, 2 red blasts. Pretty lean, just running the best stuff. Oh, hold up. I mean, I know our mana costs are pretty high, but no Ad Nauseam in our Mardu shell? On God? Altar of Dementia. I mean, a bunch of rocks. LED, Curse Mirror. I mean, pretty similar like package to like, you know, got good Goblin Engineer options. Chthonian Nightmare, another way, you know, we can go infinite. Breach, Necro. We're on Smothering Tithe. And Blind Obedience does line up really well with like Chthonian Nightmare because it makes it really easy to go infinite and then also really easy to kill everybody because you have the Extort. Really mid-rangey, I guess, Mardu. Like we don't really have, I mean, we can do stuff fast, but we can't even Naz. So like, I wonder how turbo-y we really get. Interesting stuff here. And then 26 lands. We are on the Saga and Reflecting Pool. Reflecting Pool we don't see too much of. Yeah, pretty weird not to see an Ad Nauseam here, but just doesn't need it, or maybe just feels like it's too clunky with all these like, you know, 4s and 3s and all these Tymna cards. Maybe just really leaning more into the Tymna thing and then getting big value out of like big Dargo turns with like Ob and your sacrifices, Burn Offerings, Disciple of Bolas's, Rakdos. Maybe just leaning more into that plan, like a more stable, chill Mardu shell. And even the Chinese players can't escape it. They got Nadu taken over there too. We don't have anything unbelievable here. So Bristly Bill is an option I don't think I've seen in any of the builds that we've covered so far. Just another way to target things. You get landfall a lot. So lines up pretty well with Nadu. Got the targeters like Seeker and Apheto, loans, token creators. We are on the Tribute Mage and the Trinket Mage, so we have the ability to go get like Spellskite or Lightning Greaves off of this. And then of course we're more than likely getting Shuko off of Trinket Mage. And then we are on Colossal Sky Turtle, which is just a pretty decent Simic card to run. Sorceries, we're on the Fabricate and then 4 creature tutors. Instants, Banishing Knack. That's the one that target creature gains, tap, return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. So it lets you like get 2 triggers, then also can just give you some weird interaction, especially if you're doing any tap on tap shenanigans, which can come up with like Legolas's Quick Reflexes and some other options. I mean, right? We have the Apheto Alchemist. Yeah, not running the Sea King's Blessing, any of that, which is, we're basically seeing like roughly half of decks opt to run those kind of cards and then half of them not right now. Both are seeming to have success. But yeah, not really any Nadu cards here, just, you know, cheap and free interaction and then on, I guess Banishing Knack is a Nadu card, but we're on Summoner's Pack, which I don't know that I've seen in all of them. Maybe I haven't been paying attention to this card specifically. If we're already ready to go off, yeah, being able to get like the Spring Heart Nantuko or the Scoot Swarm or whatever, or even Colossal Sky Turtle, it's cool to be able to pack for a channel effect. That's pretty hot. And then artifacts, yeah, we got the Shuko, we got the Greaves, we got the Umbral Mantle. You expect those. We're also on the Conqueror's Flail and the One Ring. Rhystic Mystic is our enchantments. 33 lands. We continue to see land counts between like 31 and 34 for the Nadu decks. This one is opting to run Field of the Dead and Dryad Arbor, so, and Shifting Woodland as some utility stuff. Some that's just, you know, kind of generically good like Woodland, and then others that are just like obviously there for Nadu shenanigans. Then we got our first Korvold. I'm excited to see what this list looks like because you never know what they're cooking with over there. So Invasion is a tutor. Some of the better dorks. Impulsive Pilfer, which is a card that has gotten a lot better with Warren Soul Trader, which isn't in this list, but it's pretty crazy when you encore it and then sack them all to Soul Trader, and then you make 2 treasures for each of the ones you sacrifice. So it gets pretty ridiculous with Korvold. Not running that here. Really only like the main standout card we have here is Activated Sleeper, which enters the battlefield as a copy of any creature card in the graveyard that was put there from the battlefield this turn. This has been most known for the like Golgari plus Protean Hulk decks. Cast Korvold, ETB, sack Dockside. You can play Activated Sleeper. Another Dockside you can run. Can be a little awkward. The flash is pretty nice. You can get, you know, opponent stuff. Can be pretty cool. We are on the Ewit here and Dualcaster Mage. Probably going to be doing some Twin Flaming stuff on the Mayhem Devil, Ruthless 6. Relatively low amount of dorks. Really just 3 mana dorks. Tenderwall and Skirk Prospector, if those count. Or Ragavan, you know. And then Orcish Lumberjack, which is like half of a dork. Sometimes it's like the best dork in your deck, and a lot of times it's just useless. Bunch of tutors, reanimate effects. We do have that Twin Flame and the Heat Shimmer as ways to go off with Dualcaster Mage, Culling Writ, One Wheel, P-Grass. Pretty standard stuff here. Instants. So lots of the best interaction we have access to. The Veils. Only the 1 Pyroblast, no Red Elemental Blast. Some removal like Abrupt Decay Assassin's Trophy. We are on the Tainted Pact. Reign of Filth, which is a card that like seems like an obvious inclusion in Korvold and can be very, very powerful. But when your goal is to like jam turn 2 or turn 3, at most you have 3 lands in play. So that can be kind of tricky to get a lot of value out of it, and it's especially bad if it's not protected and are jamming a win attempt and they wait for you to sack all your lands. That can really suck, but can be obviously a really powerful synergy with Korvold. We're on the crop rotation with 19 creatures. We might expect a Cradle. It could be good enough, and then like stuff like Emergent Zone is just great. And of course we're on the Naws and on Sonhav, which is an option we've seen less and less of in Korvold. Has nice synergy with obviously Dockside. It's great with, can go infinite with Dualcaster Mage, but it's a little tricky. Artifacts. Bunch of fast mana. We are on the Vexing Bauble, which, you know, keep hearing is a great option for Korvold. Talismans, Cursed Mirror, and the One Ring. Enchantments. So we're on the Carpet of Flowers to make some mana. Animate Dead, Chthonian Nightmare, amazing new option we've got here. Breach and Necropotence. Pretty much what the Korvolds around here would play, minus the Carpet of Flowers. That's a card that's just always some kind of meta call. You never really know any given weekend how good it's going to be. And then we got 27 lands. We are in the E-Zone. We've got Commercial District as a Surveil land. Shifting Woodland, which I know is a card Eric has cut. We're not on the Cradle. Again, not guaranteed in this kind of deck. Just being able to go get Emergent Zone, or with Korvold being able to get, you know, a fetch land is just sacrifice to Crop Rot, draw a card, put a fetch land in play, sacrifice, draw a card. Just kind of nice. 1 mana draw 2. It doesn't really cost any mana. Yavimaya seems to be an effect that it and Urborg, that Japanese players specifically tend to value. Maybe that might also be the case with the Chinese meta, but I know specifically that card and Urborg see a lot more play whenever I do the Japanese breakdowns. Maybe that's something we'll notice in the Chinese ones as well. And then we're keeping the non-blue streak going. We've got Magda. We got dwarves. Oh no, not this. Not this artwork. Ugh. What are they doing to us? We used to be a country. So Magda, pretty powerful deck. We have a bunch of bad dwarfs. That's what we do. Goblin Welder showing up here, which I don't know that we always see, but obviously has some pretty strong synergies with what Magda's trying to do, right? You know, they make a big deal to kill your artifact dwarf. You can just pop it back into play at instant speed. On Engineer as well. We're on the new Magda, which lets us commit crimes and make treasures and get a couple dragons. You know, we might be getting up to that. Dwarven Blood Boiler, I don't think we see too much of, just because of that triple red cost. They're usually trying to get cheap dwarves, but it is a way to just tap down all your dwarfs on a dwarf. So that can be pretty nice. Can really help you accelerate and get those Magda treasure counts up really fast. Hanger Scrounger is a newer one, right? Backup 1, creature becomes tapped, discard, draw. Okay, pretty good. Battered Golem is a artifact that doesn't untap during your untap. When an artifact comes into play, you can untap it. If we're able to make that one a dwarf, that's pretty hot. One-shot sniper can be a win condition for us, and just nice little way to channel and get rid of a opposition agent. Roaming Throne, one of the best new cards in these decks. Magus of the Moon showing up. This is the kind of deck I like to see this effect in because they can really just stop other people from interacting with them, and they will win relatively quickly if the rest of the table can't deal with them. Might also be on Blood Moon, we'll see. Molten Duplication and Shatter Skull. We are in the Dual Caster Mage, so we also have that backup. Galvanic Blast, Lightning Bolt, a Braid, Return the Favor. Nice new option that they've got. Sudden Shock. We really want to get rid of that Oppo. We're not dealing with it. Flare of Duplication, one of the biggest new upgrades that this deck has got. Bottle Cap Blast, another pretty sick one that you just kind of a ridiculously gross card in this deck specifically. I keep noticing that even in like mono red decks, we're seeing only red Elemental Blast and not Pyroblast anymore. Like getting more and more of a thing that people are cutting Pyroblast. Artifacts, we're gonna have a ton. It's a big old aspect of our deck. We're gonna have vehicles like Clown Car. We're gonna be able to shut off people with things like Grafdigger's Cage. Grafdigger's Cage is a notable one because it keeps us from being able to activate Magda to put in an artifact dwarf if it's a creature. So there is some tension there at least. But yeah, stuff like Elixir Immortality lets us buy back stuff, put it back into the deck. Hate pieces like Damping Sphere, Torpor Orb, Tangle Wire, God Pharaoh statue, some really big ones that can really mess with people. Null Rod. Null Rod is a little surprising. I know we don't need it with Magda, but like, I mean, we have a decent amount of artifact mana. It keeps our vehicles from being able to work too. Null Rod is a choice. I am curious to know how often that one has some tension in the list because it feels like it would a decent amount of the time. Ariad's Tempting Apple is an option we've been seeing more and more of. When it enters, gain control of a creature, you can untap it, use this on your own creature, use it on somebody else's creature. Nice little thing to be able to tutor up for. Just the big old options that we see a lot of. You know, Masquerade Nexus has been a staple of these decks. Portal since it came out. Spine of Ishna, be able to get rid of a problematic permanent, and we are on the One Ring. There's the Blood Moon we expected. We're on 28 lands. Command Beacon, Cavern, some of the Magda staples, and cards like Fomori Vault, which I'm starting to see a little bit less of, but I think decks are figuring out how good it actually is in their list. And some decks like Magda that make a whole ton of artifacts, it's going to make a lot of sense. And Volatile Fault. Search target non-basic land opponent controls. Player may search subject for basic land put into play. You create a treasure token. Okay, that's kind of cool. I haven't seen that one. We don't need blue, dude. Rakdos the Muscle. This is the first time we got to cover this commander. So we talked about it a little bit in the 98 of some other decks. Whenever you sack another creature, exile cards equal to its mana value from the top of target player's library, any player, until your next end step, you can play them and it fixes for mana. And you can sack another creature, give Rakdos the Muscle indestructible, tap it, activate only once each turn. So Rakdos itself gives you one ability to sacrifice a creature on each turn. And then any sack outlet we got, any creature that sacrifices itself is going to give us the ability to just get tons of card advantage off of our opponent's stuff. We've got sack outlets like Carrion Feeder, Flamekin Harbinger, which you're going to let search for another elemental. We'll have to be on the lookout for which elementals you're going to be getting. Taken Minor, when you commit a crime, you can bring it back. So that's kind of cool because Rakdos is committing a crime, right? Because it targets an opponent. Yeah, target player. So Rakdos does commit a crime. And this isn't once per turn. So whenever if you can sack this, you'll then commit a crime. I think this will see that because it's in the graveyard when the Rakdos target goes on the stack. I'm not really sure on the ruling on that. I'm assuming it sees it. If not, if we're able to sacrifice any two things, it will definitely see it if we're able to do something in the middle. But okay, that's pretty cool. We're gonna have lots of little dinky creatures that we get stuff out of sacrificing, like Freebooter, Impulsive Pilferer, Shambling Ghast. Master of Dark Rites is gonna let us get a whole lot of value out of sacrificing creature. It's a dark ritual. We don't need to necessarily spend the mana. It's gonna be nice when we can on a Vampire, Cleric, or Demon. You know, our commander is a demon. We're on the Goblin Recruiter. So we got a Recruiter package, a Cursed Marauder. That's the new Zach one. Okay, there's gonna be a whole lots of new stuff here that I'm gonna be walking through because I have not really looked at one of these Rakdos decks before. So we got a Goblin Recruiter package where we can get things like Engineer. We're not on Welder. We can get Dockside, Warren Soul Trader, which is gonna be fantastic in this deck. Looks like that's it as far as the goblins go, but those are pretty good. So we've got that little package. We've got a package of things that sacrifice other things for us, like Braids. What does this guy do? He sacrifices himself. Okay. Warren Soul Trader, Ruthless Technomancer sacrifices things. We're even on Crick in the deck. So using Evoke cards as well to be able to do it, because Fury is like 5 mana worth of stuff we sacrifice for 0 mana, which is pretty hot. Taking advantage of the Evoke cards. This is so cool. Crick to help us power some of this stuff out. We're going to have good things to bring back from the yard for free or cheap, like Poxwalkers. Whenever you cast a spell from anywhere in your hand, just comes into play. Then like these free effects like Priest of Gix and Priest of Urabrask that can fix our mana, but are mainly like a free creature that costs 3 to sacrifice that buys back its own mana. Prosper, we're going to be doing a whole lot of casting spells from exile. We can really go crazy with that. This is a cool looking deck. I really like it. You know, the card quality isn't amazing, but you can see, you know, some of it is really, really good stuff. And then things that just really bust open using our commander. Sorceries, like 8 good cards and then claim the Firstborn, which can untap something of ours and give it haste or take somebody else's thing. Instance, we got the Burnt Offering, Entomb, Consume, Sacrifice. We got lots of graveyard strategy stuff we're going to be doing. Songs of the Damned, not a card you see a ton of, but we get a whole, sacrifice a whole bunch of creatures, can make a whole bunch of mana with this. Mausoleum Secrets is powered up by how many cards are in a graveyard, or creature cards rather. First Flare of Malice I've seen in a cEDH deck, but it lines up perfectly here, right? Artifacts, D-Grid, Sack Outlets, of course we're going to have those, and then just fast mana. Good stuff. Necropotence, Chthonian Nightmare. That's going to let us win the game. This deck just wins with Chthonian Nightmare straight up. Sacrifice things infinitely, you done the thing, you win, bud. 25 lands. We're on the Crystal Vein, E-Zone, Cavern of Souls. Phyrexian Tower obviously going to be great here. Really cool stuff. Happy to get to talk about Rakdos because this is not a commander I've got to cover yet. It does some really cool, powerful things. It seems like a ton of fun to play. Now we do have a blue deck. What the heck? We're on such a good streak. Now we got Kess, Dissident Mage, which is an oldie but a goodie sometimes, So we got a kind of mid-rangey Grixis look here. Card advantage engines like Fairy Mastermind and Talion. Snapcaster Mage showing up. Not a card we see a lot of, but can be pretty powerful. Cards like Dothy. Not even a Ragavan showing up here. Tishana's Tidebinder, very interactive card. Dualcaster Mage. Doesn't always show up in Grixis, doesn't always make the cut. Can't just be an okay enough card, and of course has a bunch of ways to go infinite with it. Kitten having a really strong synergy with our commander, letting us once per turn over and over and over. Sorceries, so we are on the Twin Flame. Windfall as our one wheel could be a budget concern. Usually when I see just Windfall as the first wheel, comes to mind. You can pitch it to Force Wheel though, so there's that. Faithless Looting, card I think we see a lot less of in cEDH at this point, but when you have a pretty graveyard focused strategy, like most Grixis decks, but especially Kess, being able to pitch something and recast it or blah 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 whatever. Feed the Swarm, it's an okay removal spell if you're in terms of hard removal, and for the enchantment part comes up a good bit in cEDH. Kind of good reanimatory stuff. Tutors, no Diabolic Intent, 12 creatures, you might be able to make it work, but there's not a lot of little dinky things lying around to sacrifice. Grim Tutor over that kind of makes sense. Instants, we got 31. Alchemist Retrieval, Dispel, Offer, whole bunch of counter spells. Spell Pierce, Arcane Denial, Counter Spell itself. Okay, we're going really deep. Negate, Frantic Search, kind of nice cast card. Are doing Sawn Half, which I kind of figured when I see Dualcaster Mage. Also being able to Sawn Half a Dockside twice with Kess is so stupid. Yeah, good Grixis-y cards. We are on the Nas. Going kind of crazy deep on some of these counter spells, like Counterspell itself in a Grixis shell. Kind of crazy. Not really something I expect to see most of the time. Even Mana Drain doesn't usually make the cut, but we're going as deep as actual Counterspell. That's kind of wild. Dismember as well in our Nas deck, which, the pressure on its life, you can pay 2 life with it, and 2 mana way to kill with most creatures. It's fine. Entomb also great with Kess. Artifacts, we're on the Ring, whole bunch of Talismans. No Jeweled Lotus, which kind of makes sense. Kess is a little awkward with Jeweled Lotus. Enchantments, we're on the Dress Down, really the only one that stands out. And then these 4 you should expect to see in most Grixis lists at this point. We are on the Cavern of Souls. Probably naming Wizard. That hits Kess, Dualcaster, Thoracle, Snapcaster, Tishana's Tidebinder. Okay, yeah, I can see that. Okay, Cavern on Wizard's pretty good. We're on the E-Zone. We're seeing a lot of non-Crop Rot decks opting to run E-Zone here at this event. And Reflecting Pool, and Urza Saga. The thing I mentioned about budget seems to be more true once I get to the mana base and I see there's no duels. Might not have been a proxy friendly event. Sometimes people just bring that list as it is anyways. But when you see no reserve list stuff like the dual lands and Wheel of Fortune, usually assume that there's some kind of budget constraint, especially when there's no dual lands. Wheel over Windfall, sure, it's not always strictly better or worse. Dual lands are definitely, better than Luxury Suite though. Next up, we got a Sisay, and I see a bunch of Planeswalkers. So it's looking like it's that kind of Sisay. A card that we saw a bunch of right after it released, and I've seen a lot less of since then, is Honest Rutstein, which lets you do a whole bunch of cool stuff with Sisay, where you just get to buy back permanents, anything you're sacrificing or gets killed or whatever. You can start to loop things, especially because you can flicker it with a meal, so you get a whole lot of options with that. Are on the Lavinia, Kalain, which is a card we've seen a bit less of recently. Gilded Drake, which isn't the most popular in Sisays, but does pop up. Revi, Olivia, which is decently popular. Rocco, Urtai. So nothing that I haven't seen before in a Sisay, but a couple options that are either less popular now or just don't come up all that often. DT and Neoform. Sisays love cheap removal. They pretty much all run cards like Abrupt Decay. You might see some channel effects to kill things. Here we've got Abrade and Dismember, as well as Gladriel's Dismissal to phase out something like an Op Agent or somebody's entire board, potentially. Limdol's Vault, not often a card that you see the Sisays choose to run, but showing up here. Artifacts, Mana, Cauldron, the One Ring. Enchantments, again, still pretty standard stuff. Mystic Ristic, a lot of them run Cultist. Oath of Teferi. There's no Oath of Nissa here. Blind Obedience and Smothering Tide are pretty much staples of Sisay. And then 28 lands. We've got the Cradle, Mount Doom, whole bunch of duels and fetches. So relatively standard Sisay stuff. They always have I don't know, like a million slots. It feels like that they can be flexible on and can just adjust the deck as they feel like they need to. And this is what they rock this weekend. Then we've got a Talion running Jace Wielder of Mysteries. What a throwback. Throwback to when that was a reasonable win condition, right? So yeah, we've got the first volatile Stormdrake I've seen in like 2 weeks, or this week at least. Running that and Gilded Drake. Nice control options. Dothy, Spellskite, protect my Talion. Shieldred. A lot of the Talions kind of like to lean into the life pressure they put on people. Running some number of clones. Sakashima can be an extra Talion. Tidebinder, maybe a card the Chinese players are a little bit higher on. And then Hullbreaker Horror. Talions don't have necessarily an outlet for it, but they'll figure out some kind of way to win. If you got Hullbreaker Horror, you have Black Tutors, you'll figure out a way to Bowmaster Loop and kill everybody. Sorceries, we got Tutors, we got Reanimate, we got the Deluge, we got the Yogg's Will, which doesn't always come up in Talions. Sometimes they're scared little babies who don't want to play anything proactive. I'm not trying to hate on you Talion players, but it's a nice way to just buy back, like, you know, maybe like a Tutor and a Reanimate, or buy back a board wipe, whatever, just a good card. Mean bet as well. Lorien Revealed and Seagate Restoration. That means we're definitely not nosing. Just decent flexible cards. You'll end up using both modes of these. You know, usually use the get a land or be a land side more often than not, but sometimes it comes up. And more counter spells than you can shake a stick at. We got Strix Serenades, the first Stern Scolding I've seen since the printing of Strix Serenade. March of Swirling Mist, Spell Pierce, Mana Drain, Drown in the Lock. Of course, no Naws. We're on the Intuition, which is a little bit cooler when you got a Yoggwill. Flare of Denial. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, really 6 blue creatures plus our commander. I don't really count Sakashima. I don't think it stays blue. It has to clone something blue to be blue. And then the Drakes are not that likely to, you gotta be in a weird spot to sacrifice them. So really, you kind of want to be comfortable sacrificing Talion to use Flare of Denial. In some scenarios, you will be, right? If you're gonna lose, you want to use it, but curious to know how well the card performed in a deck with this low of a blue creature count, and a commander that's pretty high impact on its own that you don't often want to sacrifice. Like, people talk about not wanting to sacrifice Thrasios. I mean, Talion is a card that people actually run in their decks. Thrasios is like a card Kinnan runs in its deck as a clean outlet. No one else is trying to use Thrasios as an engine. Talion is a very good card. Artifacts, just the 2 hate pieces we kind of expect. Cage and Cursed Totem. Cage has some tension with Yoggwill. Doesn't affect your Mnemonic Betrayal. So Cursed Totem, I don't think we have a single activated ability other than Sakashima's. No, we kind of got a decent amount. It's going to be more impactful against the green decks. We are on the Ring. Enchantments, run the Blood Chief's Ascension. Pretty common at this point that people run this card without actually running the Mind Crate in combo with it, just to pressure life totals. Counterbalance, we hate people having fun. Meathook Massacre, get rid of those creatures. Also, I can never unsee that this looks like a little monkey instead of a hand. 29 lands. Nothing too wild with this Talion list, but Talion doing the thing. Then we got our one and only Tymna Kraum for the event. Let's see what a Chinese Tymna Kraum looks like. It looks pretty similar, and it's looking like it has a lack of Phyrexian Metamorph and Ragavan. So it, in general, kind of looking like Chinese players aren't very high on Ragavan. I mean, people talk about how he's only good on like the first turn you have him, you know, like turn 2 getting in. After that, he gets locked out. Maybe that's kind of a consensus thing over there, that too hard to get in with Ragavan. Maybe he's not good enough. Sorceries, we are on the Reanimate. We're on Deluge as a wipe. Jessica's Will, which isn't the most popular option in Tymna Kraum, but it shows up. Wheel and Windfall. So double wheeling. The rest of these don't really stand out too much. Instants. Whole bunch of them. We got both the Blast. We're on Rain of Filth. I love it. Swords, no path, like Griff. We're on the Snapback. Sink into Stupor, not a card I've seen too much in TNK or at all, maybe. March of Swirling Mist. So like some cards that we've seen pop in and out of TNKs, other than Sink into Stupor, which is a pretty new card. Artifacts, basically exactly standard, except Imposter Mech showing up here. So I guess running that over Phyrexian Metamorph, it certainly has some utility. You know, really good at copying things and being harder to kill. Chthonian Nightmare, a card I keep hearing about in Tymna Kraum. It's a little hard for me to evaluate because I know it doesn't really win, so it can be kind of goofy to have it in your hand and like be like, I have infinite mana and I can't use it. But you know, infinite mana isn't too bad, right? We play Smothering Tithe. It's kind of like this is like an Omniscience, right? Kind of like the Smothering Tithe, so pretty nice. And you know, we get to draw a couple cards, we'll figure something out. Necropotence, card we see more and more of in TNK. 27 lands, one of those being an MDFC. Cavern, relatively standard mana base outside of that. Yeah, you know it. Korvold's better than Tymna Kraum. It's got even more tops than they do in this tournament. We're going to see some of the same stapley cards, but we've also got Dothy Voidwalker, Blighted Halfling, Destiny Spinner, and Witherbloom Apprentice, so we're probably Wither Chaining and Dualcaster Maging. Some cards we haven't really seen in many Korvold builds at all, and especially not too recently, but maybe we're grinding it out a little bit, right? You know, Dothy Voidwalker, not a card you get a lot of value out of turn 2, typically. Destiny Spinner can be really hot to make our Docksides and Korvolds uncounterable. Sorceries, Finale. We're on the J-Will. We're on Deluge, so we have a board wipe of our own in our 19 creature deck. Chain of Smog, of course. Twin Flame to go with the dual caster. Wheel of Misfortune along with regular wheel. So not too often you see an actual like kill all the creatures board wiping Korvold. It's usually just like Going Ritual. Instance. Not a lot. Noxious. Just the Veil of Summer. No Autumn's Veil. Horde of Calling. Kind of a cool option if you're going to be this heavy on the creatures. No crop rotation, so I'm not sure if we're cradling. It feels like if we're courting, you probably are cradling, but we'll see. No Cabal Ritual either. Artifacts. Bunch of fast mana. We're on the Ring. We're on the Grinding Station. No Defense Grid. So no Defense Grid or no Docen. So you know that means I will have to call this player a coward. We're on Curse Mirror though. Okay, well they're based because they have Squander Resources. So that's cool. They're a little bit of a coward, but they're based at least. And then Chthonian Nightmare, Anime Dead. These you should expect to see in every Korvold. And then they're also on Squander Resources. 26 lands. We're on Cavern of Souls. My guy, what are you naming? Cavern on what? Dragon? Goblin? Pirate? It's probably pirate. I guess it just depends on the game, but what is your just blind, I gotta name something in this deck? I don't feel like there is one. Reflecting Pool keeps popping up. What the heck? There's that Urborg and Yavimaya I was telling you guys about, and they're on Saga. A little bit more grindy take, I feel like, on Korvold, running some of the older win cons and the new ones. Really, they're just jamming a lot. Like, there's no new win con in Korvold that's not here. Like, it's usually like Technomancer or Mayhem Devil Loops or Looping Bowmaster with Chthonian Nightmare or whatever it is. They're doing that, plus they're doing like Wither Chain and Dualcaster Mage. You know what it is. Nadu. Maybe I slept on it too much. They're also running the Bristly Bill, ESG, Kitten, Trinket, and Tribute Mage, Coot Swarm. Gilded Drake, I don't know that we've seen in all of these. The spooky part about Gilded Drake is you don't want to introduce it to the game and then have someone clone it and take your Nadu, because then your life freaking sucks. We're on Transmute, and then these two creature tutors. Essence Flux popping up here. I don't think it was in the last one. Rabbit Hybridization. Another person not opting for the Seeking Blessing effect. We're on to Force of Vigor. A bunch of interaction, cord, quick reflexes, some targeted removal to deal with creatures. Seems like in general, people pretty respectful of creatures at this event. Artifacts, we got the one, the targeters we expect, mana, and the One Ring. We're on the Earthcraft, a card that we've seen in like maybe a third of Nadu's. 32 lands seems to be about right. We're on the Cavern of Souls, naming probably Wizard Pendlehaven to target creature. It seems like none of them can decide which land that randomly targets a creature is the best. I feel like Pendlehaven might be a little on the niche side, but we do make a lot of 1/1s. So more Nadus. They keep doing it. They're getting away with it right now. You guys kept telling me at first everyone's like, oh, it's broken. Now everyone's like, oh, it's actually terrible. It's so easy to deal with. And then every tournament I'm covering has like at least 2 of them in the top 16. So what's the deal, boys? It's starting to seem like maybe it is pretty good. And then there were 4. We're looking at the top 4 with a deck that people always seem to love and mention to me, but doesn't usually pop up nowadays. It's Tevesh Thrasios. We are grinding with Sultai, with Tyvar, one of my favorite planeswalkers. And we're Hermit Druiding. Oh, I love it. And Sanctum Weaver? Okay. Oh, we're Razakats? We're Street Wraithing? Are we a Doomsday deck? What is happening? So we've got, okay, so a lot of info here. We've got Hermit Druid. You guys know this card. It's kind of its own archetype. We'll figure out, there's no creature here that really synergizes with Hermit Druid. There's no Malevolent Hermit or Narcomoeba or any of that garbage. Really just, we'll figure something out with the Hermit Druid. Sanctum Weaver, which is like just a 2-mana dork if you don't have any other enchantments. So maybe we have a decently high enchantment count to make it a little bit better. Well, we are on the Storm Drake, no Gilded Drake. We're on the Street Wraith, which is not a card you see a lot of. Like, you can't really run it very well on Nas decks. Most known for Doomsday piles, which is something that Tevesh that itself can crack. Tyvar works pretty well with Hermit Druid stuff too. If it's in play, we can, tap. Hermit Druid has haste, tap it, put Thrasios into play with Tyvar. Hullbreaker Horror, which goes infinite with both of our commanders, so great option. And then Razaketh, which is a card we've seen less and less and less of recently. It's kind of been, at this point, really, Reanimator decks are just keep reanimating Dockside, or they are like dedicated Hoarding Broodlord decks that do like Saw in Half, stuff. Razaketh, not one we see a lot of. We'll see if there's like a Life and Death or what we're doing here. There's the Doomsday. That's the called shot right there, folks. And Dread Return, which is, okay, we'll get into it. So we got the Git Probe. This is a way to crack a Doomsday pile and also a way to check if the ghost is clear. Tutors, reanimate, makes a lot of sense. That's what we're doing. Deluge, people seem to be packing that a lot here. Culling Ritual is generically good. Doomsday, we can set up a pile where we can draw through our deck and then end on a Thoracle. We get 5 cards, get a little pile. Ideally, we're doing this behind some kind of silence effect. We're not running like Docen or whatever, so we'll see if we have one. Or we at least have a decent amount of interaction, or it's hard for people to deal with us. And then Dread Return, which is going to help us to do the Hermit Druid shenanigans, where if we have like Hermit Druid, and 2 other creatures, we're able to sacrifice those to reanimate Thassa's Oracle. A lot of times you'll see something like a Narcomoeba. That way you only need like 1 other creature beyond your Hermit Druid, or whatever way you mill yourself. You can also, of course, in a pinch, just cast the spell if it's in your hand. Also flash it back to reanimate something like a Razaketh. Like you can use it on some of these other big stuff we have, like Hullbreaker or Razaketh. We do have decent reanimation targets. Instance. Stern Scolding over Strict Serenade is incorrect. You don't run that nowadays. They maybe just didn't have one ready to go, but that's wrong. You cut it for that. Turn the Earth is a cool thing that we can do when we are Hermit Druiding. You'll usually see that, where we can mill our entire deck, like in the upkeep or something, choose some cards, put them into our library, boom, 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 there we go. Entomb goes with everything we're doing. Reanimation effects, bunch of cheap and free interaction. We're not nausing, of course we're not. Force of Vigor, card we keep seeing more and more of this past week. Artifacts, no defense grid, so we're always just hoping to have more interaction than the rest of the table. We are on the One Ring, some rocks. Enchantments. Freed from the Real is a reason to be playing the good old Sanctum Weaver, where we can tap and untap it and get infinite mana and pump that into Thrasios. Animate Dead, of course. We're a Reanimator deck. Rhystic Mystic, of course. We're a cEDH deck. Necropotence, just a pretty powerful card. And Training Grounds, an okay little thing to do with Thrasios. 28 lands, we are cradling. I don't believe we saw a Crop Rot. A little surprising because I feel like there's new reasons to be doing this kind of strategy. If you're entombing and reanimating and milling your library, cards like Shifting Woodland have a lot of utility. So being able to Crop Rot for that card, which isn't here currently, maybe they haven't updated post MH3. And then also Guy's Cradle, obviously pretty good. There's lots of new utility lands to be running right now, like Talon Gates, things like that. So that might be something that this player looks to do, or you could do if you want to build a deck like this. Probably something I would like to see, because being able to just entomb something, Shifting Woodland, I have a Razaketh or a Hullbreaker, pretty powerful. Next up, we got Tymna Kydele. Not a combination you see too often nowadays. Tymna gets you cards, Kydele makes you mana for each card. Seems like a pretty natural, little combination. So don't have a billion creatures. We've got only 1 Dork Delighted Halfling, no Birds of Paradise even. Drake, Grand Abolisher, Kite Sail, a card I'm pretty high on. No Collector Oof, any of that stuff, so it doesn't look like we're doing that Null Rod kind of stuff. We've got Con Sphinx and Hullbreaker Horror as really big option. Like, if you're going to run Hullbreaker Horror and no Thrasios, that's kind of odd. Con Sphinx to draw us a bunch of carbs. Hey, that makes Kydele better, right? Wandering Archaic, mid-rangey option. Halfling is your only dork, and there's no legends even in the 98. I mean, maybe the One Ring, we might get to some others, but non-creatures. That's so weird. There's some really weird deck building choices here. Okay. I guess Bloomtender is also a dork, but like usually if you're running one mana dork, it's Birds of Paradise. Sorceries, extra turn spells, tap, untap. Oh, we're a dedicated One Ring deck, but there's no Derevi. But this is making it look like we're a dedicated One Ring deck that we're doing tap, untap shenanigans and extra turns. And our commander is empowered by like drawing cards. Okay. We're solving some mysteries here, gang. Then Transmute, probably a One Ring deck. No Diabolic Intent. Creature count, probably could support it. Instance, cheap and free interaction. We're on the Brainstorm, which is very good with Kydele. I guess that makes sense. Crop Rot, Born, Quick Reflexes. Dramatic Reversal, so we're probably an ISO Rev deck. Brain Surge. We're going Brain Surge levels of deep to make Kydele work. Yo, Intellectual Offering. Choose an opponent, you and that player draw 3 cards. Choose an opponent, untap all non-land permanents you control and all non-land permanents they control. We've seen this card somewhat recently, but the idea being you pick different people, you give one of them cards that doesn't have mana, you give one of them mana that doesn't have cards, whatever. No ad nauseum. Okay. Fast mana and stuff. Staff of Domination. We can go infinite with Kydele. This is so cool. Wow, I did not think about that. Aetherflux Reservoir. There's no ISO Rev, so it's literally just Dramatic Reversal and untap stuff, like the One Ring, or Chromatic Warrior, I guess. We're on the Sensei's top. Maybe we're on Counterbalance, we'll see. Okay. So Aetherflux is a way to kill people. We're doing Aetherflux top Citadel as a way to win. Camille, your spells can't be countered, which is pretty hot. And then you discover 5. So you get the top spell of your deck every turn. We're a Necro Dominance deck. Harpit, Rhystic Mystic, Necropotence. You expect to see that. Also on Necro Dominance. Okay. I'm with it. And then 28 lands. We're on the E zone. No Cradle, doesn't really support it. Talon Gate. So some of the stuff I'd like to see in these newer Crop Rod decks. So we can win by using Staff of Domination with our commander. If Kydele taps for 4, it's neutral. You need to tap for 5, and then you can get infinite colorless mana, and then you can start drawing your deck with Staff of Domination. Very interesting stuff. And then Citadel top. That makes sense with the Transmute, right? Just the one of extra turn spell. Kind of interesting too. Very wild deck list. I was a little bit of a doubter when I first see Kydele, but then as you go, you can kind of see more and more synergies with it. So it is kind of cool. I'd also like to see a Ranger Captain. That card's just busted. Yeah, really interesting stuff. And cards like hidden strings that work pretty well with like a Tymna deck where you get to untap your permanents, whatever, on hit. Okay, there's some pretty cool stuff here. I was kind of sleeping on it, and maybe it could be cleaned up a little bit, but really cool idea for a deck. We got one more Sisay. You got the 6 Planeswalkers. So Lavinia, Lotho, Derevi, Chainer here. You kind of see that often as a haste enabler. Urtai, Sakashima. We're on the Colossal Sky Turtle. An option to see more and more of these decks. Nothing super standing out here. We're on the Sevrek, which you don't see too often in the non-breach variants. There's no Thoracle. I mean, Sevrek can just buy back, like a Planeswalker or whatever. So it's not crazy. It's just not one I usually see. I talk all the time about most Sisays run just like the same 4 sorceries. Instance, we've got Dovin's Vetoed. Intuition, we're not breaching, but we are just really using the kind of broken combination of Sevrek and Intuition, which I like. Sort of the best interaction we have access to. Dovin's Veto, interesting chord. Okay, Swat Fierce, good stuff. On the Relic of Legends, One Ring, Agatha's Soul Cauldron. On the Oath of Nissa here, we're on Chthonian Nightmare here as well, which we haven't really seen pop up as much in the Sisays, but hey, we're a Dockside deck, right? 28 lands. So yeah, really just assembling something like Chthonian Nightmare loop, probably with Intuition Sevrek, something like that. Yeah, on the Cradle, Mount Doom, bunch of duels. So not too wild, but does have this nice little package we don't see very often in the Sisay decks. And then this one, the meme has come full circle. There was a really big meme where Eric and I would make fun of Oswald Fiddlebender, not because of the deck, but just because it had a whole bunch of deck lists on the cEDH database, and we loved making fun of that thing whenever we could. But Oswald Fiddlebender took down this whole event. Pretty insane. So, from what I've heard, this is more of a proactive turbo slant on Oswald that is trying to very quickly, lock people out to some extent, but not a dedicated stacks list. Make sure other people can't win, but quickly assemble an artifact combo. These decks are usually the hardest to overview, so I'm going to do my best, but stay with me. I am not an Oswald Fiddlebender expert. I am an Oswald Fiddlebender hater who is very excited to talk about this deck. When Eric first told me about it, I was really hyped. Not too many creatures. Ballista, probably going to combo with that, getting infinite mana or infinite counters. Aethersworn Canonist is going to be a great borderline asymmetrical rule of law for us with how many artifacts we run, even in our creature count, right? 5 artifacts. Liberator is going to let us flash into play artifacts. That's pretty hot, as well as get some counters. Mirror Retriever and Scrap Trawler, those are very well known for their synergies with any of the egg style artifact sacrifice cards, where you're able to get them into play, you lose a thing, sack a thing, get another thing back, you start doing some loops if you get multiples. Myrel is just another Grand Abolisher, but it does make artifacts, so will give us some zeros lying around, or if we care about just artifact quantity, it's going to matter as well. Sevrek and Open the Vault. Sevrek you know and love. Open the Vaults, turn all artifact enchantment cards from all graveyards to the battlefield under their owner's control. Sometimes it's going to be a negative, but it's the closest thing we have to just artifact replenish, right? So, and we might get a whole lot of artifacts into the yard, and it might not matter what everyone else has. Generic sort of interaction here. Second Sunrise and Face Reward, both well known for the eggs style decks where we sacrifice a bunch of things in a turn, cast one of these, bring back all that stuff. And here is the daunting part. 55 artifacts. Do not get in my comments and tell me about how I missed whatever this line to go get this, to loop this, to Gerard's Hourglass Pennant and do all the... Leave me alone. I'm doing my best. Okay, we're going to go 1 mana value at a time. So we have fast mana, artifacts that we can use to just draw cards or increase artifact count, the baubles. We got the sphere, the chromatic, the star and sphere kind of effect where we can sack them, make a mana, draw a card. Those can let us just kind of filter through the deck a little bit while we make mana, as well as being ones. The mana value is going to be important, right? So making sure I read Oswald so everybody knows how the commander works. 2 mana, 1 and tap, sacrifice an artifact. That's part of the cost. Search your library for an artifact card with mana value equal to 1 plus the sacrifice artifact's mana value, put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle, activate only as a sorcery. So it's like a birthing pod for artifacts. I can have a Mishra's Bauble in play, activate Oswald, put a Duskrow's Willow Query into play, get to ignore that additional cost, and then just ETB, exile target artifact creature opponent controls until it leaves. Boom. Codex Shredder, very likely going to have some kind of way to mill everybody out. We can also potentially use it to buy back something. Lava Spur Boots, haste enablers for Oswald, they're going to be nice. They're going to speed us up by a turn. Gerard's Hourglass, kind of cool card. So it lets us do this kind of eggs thing of you can exile it, turn the battlefield, all this stuff, which is pretty nice to be able to tutor up an egg kind of effect with Oswald. It was probably a pretty big upgrade for this deck. People skipping extra turns comes up against Time Sibs, Final Fortune, stuff like that. Sisay's top, generically good. Soul Guide Lantern and Vexing Bauble. Ways we can mess with people. We're going to have lots of ways to mess with people and keep people off balance. Or just lock people out from interacting with us. Terrarian, 2-tap, sacrifice it, add 2 mana in any combination of colors. Put into a graveyard from the battlefield, draw a card. So we're also going to see some Cantripy ones. Especially the ones that their draw clause is on them going to the graveyard and not necessarily on them having their ability used. Those are going to have extra utility with Oswald. Although maybe sometimes you might draw the card you're going to put into play, so that could be tricky. Energy Refractor is going to help us. Mana Filter also draws a card. Lots of ways to draw cards. You're going to notice that. Kind of skipping ahead here. We're going to be on Krark Clan Ironworks. This is going to be a very powerful thing that we do in this deck where we can get a bunch of artifacts into play, sacrifice a couple of them, maybe search up the KCI, sacrifice all the rest of them, play one of those, second sunrise effects, bring them all back, draw cards on the way out, draw cards on the way in for some of them, start sacrificing them again, draw some more cards. I'm assuming we have some kind of way to like untap our Oswald. Yep. Untap target creature that has an activated ability with tap in its cost. That's pretty specific, but okay. Helm of Awakening is going to really let us dump out some of these things. But what is our main combo? Let's look for an easy way. Like I know we can almost certainly mill people out with the Codex Shredder. Affinity for artifacts. So this is just like a 3 that costs 0. That's kind of cool. Torpor Orb's going to hurt other people. Doesn't affect our artifacts. You can exile a artifact this to make all your artifacts cost you less. 1,000 Year Elixir is going to give him haste and untap our guy. Trinisphere will lock people out. It will affect us. Mystic Forge will let us just kind of go through a lot of our deck, hopefully. Memory Jar gives us a wheel on that effect. Ugin's Nexus. If it would be put in a graveyard anywhere, exile it and take an extra turn. After this one, Coveted Jewel, hot. See, we do have the Walking Ballista. So I'm pretty sure we have a way to do infinite mana and then we can put the counters on Ballista. Sorry guys, I got to figure this one out. No enchantments. And then 27 lands. We get a couple really cool ones. So artifact lands just have extra utility here. There's zeros we can sack. Inventor's Fair lets us tutor up for an artifact. Of course, Saga does as well. Treasure Vault makes artifacts and is one. Talon Gates is just good. And then Mycosynth Gardens, spin X, tap it, becomes a copy of target non-token artifact you control, mana value X. Just a really good card in a deck that runs 55 freaking artifacts. Yeah, so I'm assuming we're gonna have to work our way up to do some kind of eggs shenanigans. Draw through a lot of our deck. I'm not an expert on this deck. You can kind of see a lot of the moving pieces, especially if you played like Oswald or Teshar or whatever. But mono white, I don't even know if it has shown up in one of these videos yet, period. I especially don't think it ever showed up in the top 4, and it's never won. Absolutely has never won in any video that I've done. But here we have it. Oswald Fiddlebender, the hated one, just the meme of my channel, just showing up and being a beast, just taking down this event. It's super sick. Let me know down below which of these decks was your favorite. There's a lot of wildness here. Anything you see that I didn't catch, please feel free to let me know down below. Just don't be mean. Just be nice about it, okay? And we're all here to learn, right? I love getting to do these events from other countries. I always think it's just the coolest thing I get to do. You guys tend to love it. Hopefully I get to see more of those. And if one happens and I don't see it, let me know. I'll do my best to cover it. With all that being said, thank you so much for watching. And as always, go play cEDH. Have a good one, everybody.